A very good morning I bid to Sir Solehuddin. Today, Group 3 from the class U06 will be presenting inflation. Our group members are Elisha Rendiana Ringa, Hazizuddin bin Hossein, Nur Asnia Dania binti Johar, Nurhani Hazika binti Muhammad Haswadi, and Shiraz Carmila Sofia binti Khalidi. I will be defining inflation, deflation, and stagflation. First of all, inflation is a continuous increase in the general price level of goods and services in the economy. Deflation is a decrease in the general price level of goods and services in the economy, and stagflation is the condition in an economy when there is high unemployment and rapid inflation simultaneously. I will be explaining the degrees of inflation. Firstly, we have creeping inflation. Creeping inflation is a situation in which the rise in general price level is at a very slow rate over a period of time. It is a sustained rise in prices by about 2% per year. Now, mild inflation is a sustained rise in price by about 8% to 10% per year. It is when the rise in price level is neither too fast or too slow. Now, hyperinflation occurs when a country experiences very high and accelerating rates of inflation. During hyperinflation, monthly prices rise by 50% to 60% or even more per year.
We are going to talk about the causes of inflation. So let's proceed to the next slide. The causes of inflation. We have two causes of inflation. The first one is demand pull inflation that commonly cause rising prices. Usually it happens when demand for goods and services increases very high that exceeds supply. For example, producers are having difficulties building the manufacturing needed to increase supply. It is also caused by an increase of government expenditure or a rise in investment by firms or an increase in demand of the country's export by people in foreign countries or combination of those four mentioned earlier. Based on the diagram, you can see that the aggregate demand curve will shift to the right while aggregate supply remains constant. The important thing to note and to remember is demand pull inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. A booming economy affects inflation when people manage to get better jobs and is more confident to spend more. As price level increases, people start to expect inflation. It makes consumers spend more to avoid future price increases. That further increases growth. Other than that, marketing and new technology led to demand pull inflation for specific products or asset classes. The asset inflation led to general prices increases. For instance, a popular brand like Apple makes use of its branding to create demand for its product. Subsequently, that allows it to charge higher prices than the competition. Lastly, overexpansion of the money supply is one of the factors that cause demand pull inflation. However, the money supply is not only cash, as it also includes credit, loans, and mortgage. The value of the dollar lowered when the money supply expanded. When the dollar declines relative to the value of foreign currencies, the prices of imports rise. The prices in the general economy also increase. The second cause of inflation is cost push inflation, whereby there is an increase in the general price level associated with an increase in the cost of production. Aggregate demand remains constant while aggregate supply curve shifts to the left. This is based on the graph you can see in the slide, and there are few factors that contribute to inflation on the supply side. For instance, wage inflation increases salaries. It usually occurs when there is an increase in the wage level, which leads to an increase in the cost of production and output price. But it rarely happens without active labor unions, because organized labor unions will seek further wage increases through their collective bargaining strength. So another thing is profit push inflation happens when monopolies and producers stock up goods till it creates a shortage that soon leads to an increase of price, thereby giving them high profits. And when the prices of imported raw materials and goods increase, import push inflation will occur. It leads to an increase in production costs and an increase in the price of outputs. If a country lowered its currencies exchange rates, it will create inflation in imports, whereby foreign goods are more expensive compared to locally produced goods.
So let's talk about the effects of inflation. What are the effects of the inflation? So I will be discussing about the effects of inflation in terms of savings, production, balance of trade, and the distribution of income. First of all, I will explain the effects of inflation on saving. When inflation happens, customers lose some of the purchasing power and the real value of saving will decline. Therefore, people will avoid keeping money in cash during inflation and they will invest their money on investment that has a higher returns than the inflation rate. Moving on, the effects on production. So as general price of goods and service increases, producer will increase the production level and the investments to gain more profit. So this will help in reducing an unemployment rate and offer more jobs opportunities. Next, the effects of inflation on the balance of trades. So when the price of local goods increase, this will make people import more foreign goods as it is less expensive than the local goods. So the demands of local goods will decrease due to the competitions of traditional trades. So this will cause a deficit balance of trades. For example, if the price of potato in our country increases, so people will import potatoes from other countries that have a much cheaper price. Moving on to the last effects of inflation, which is the distribution of incomes. So in this case, some people will gain benefit and some people will lose benefit during the inflations. For example, borrowers benefits from inflation because the real value of money itself has changed. Meanwhile, the lender will lose during the inflation because the money that they lend now has a less purchasing power.
Did you guys know that during inflation period there are type of people that will stand gain and lose during that period? Who are they? People who stand gain known as the winners and people who are lose known as the losers. One of the winners during inflation is the owners of land and physical assets. It is because land or even factories or computers will maintain their value, and there also a rise in demand for commodities such as gold and silver in period of hyperinflation. It's because holding gold is a way to protect real wealth in way of money cannot protect it. And since gold cannot be written or cannot be subjected in the same inflationary pressures as the paper currency. Next, fixed rate of mortgage holders are also considered as the winners because higher inflation will benefit the homeowners who purchase of the rate of the real estate, and they still manage to own more than their home worth by allowing them to accumulate the equity faster. Additionally, the business or household with a high debit also considered the winners during the inflation period. It is because high rate inflation can make them easier to pay back their outstanding debits, and business will able to increase the prices for the consumers and use the extra revenue to pay the outstanding debits. Hence, we can conclude that the debtors are considered as the gainers and the creditors are considered as the losers. Traditionally, if we have the winners, so we have the losers. Who are the losers? The savers. The savers are considered as the losers during inflation period. It is because savings are practically worthless at the higher rates. Is it because price increases means that money lost its value? Even the investment also lost their real values. If we both have the high inflation rate and low interest rates, the savers are mostly lost their money. As if because higher prices, their savings are effectively worthless. For example, in aftermath of 2008 credit crisis in United States, it stated that inflation rose to 5% due to cost-proof of factors, but the interest rate will reduce 0.5%. As a result, the savers lost a lot of money during this period. Last but not least, the retirees people. A high inflation means wage increase, but that will not benefit for those who already retired. As we all know, their retirement pot is already fixed. This means that the higher inflation erodes the value of the savings that already have. When inflation goes up, it intends to accelerate a lot faster than interest that keep up. So it will erode the buying power not only of the existing savings but anybody who is relying on the interest income or investment income like retired people. So we can conclude that inflation will only hurt those who are keep cash savings and workers with fixed wages, and only benefit with the large debit who with rising prices that find it easier to pay back their debits.
Moving on to the inflation rate for Malaysia, Pakistan and Iran in the year of 2014 and 2019. Inflation rate is the percentage increase or decrease in prices during a specific period, usually a month or a year. The percentage tells you how quickly prices rose during the period. In order to measure the rate of inflation, Consumer Price Index or CPI could be used as an index that measures changes in the average price of consumer goods and services. According to the World Bank, Malaysia's inflation rate is decreasing throughout the years. In 2014, Malaysia's inflation rate is 3.143%, whereby in 2019, Malaysia's inflation rate declines to only 0.663%. According to International Journal of Economics and Financial Issues, Malaysia's inflation rate used to be higher back in the year because of higher global financial crisis and higher global commodity for food prices. Different from Pakistan, Pakistan inflation rate has increased from 2014 to 2019. In 2014, Pakistan recorded 7.189% of inflation rate, and that increased to 10.578% in 2019. According to a survey from Pakistan Economic Survey, this sharp increase of inflation rate is due to food and energy prices, which has been a global problem, especially to developing countries. Last but not least, Iran's inflation rate is higher than both Malaysia and Pakistan. In 2014, Iran's inflation rate is 16.607%, and that has a major increase to 39.907% in 2019. According to a statistic, Iran's inflation rate is high as Iran has less borrowing, means less investment, which slows the economic growth. This slower growth often leads to higher inflation, which is what economists call as inflationary spiral. As such, Iran will have difficulty achieving substantial GDP growth until inflation returns to manageable rates. In economics, inflation is a rise in the general level of prices of goods and services in an economy over a period of time. Inflation is the result of excess of aggregate demand over the aggregate supply, and the true inflation starts after full employment. The rise in price level before full employment is semi-inflation. Inflation plays a vital role for the development of the economy. The inflation rate must be at moderate level. For developing countries, 3% to 4% rate of inflation could be acceptable, but in developed countries, it must be 1 to 2% only. Central Bank of the country plays the vital role in controlling the inflation rate and other related economical activities. When inflation rate is raised highly, it decreases the purchasing power of the people, and cost of product would be costlier. However, it is not only decreases the purchasing power of the people, but also affects the import, export ratio, production activities, and employment activities, and so on. So, the inflation rate must be controlled proper by the central bank of the particular country. That's all from us. Thank you.